Hello, 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 everyone. What's going on? We're just jumping right into it. I have no intro anymore because all my intros get stricken for copyright. So we're just jumping into it all the time now. Well, let me move my window over here. Now we're good. How you guys doing? How's everyone doing? We're losing a lot of people for this book. I don't think this is a great piece of literature. It's fun. Definitely a little bit different. We're gonna read to chapter 20, which is a lot of reading. It's like 30 pages. So we got some work cut out for us. I don't know what the rest of this is going to be about. If it's going to be like they're actually trying to get people out of France, or if they're just trying to, the Scarlet Pimpernel is just trying to evade capture or something like that. We'll see. I'm also going to start pretty quick. I'm going to start in like a few minutes because I got a bunch of stuff I got to get done today. So we're going to move along. We're going to move this quick. Is the Scarlet Pimpernel technically, like, what is the classic literature label? I'm trying to figure that out. What is considered a classic of literature? I don't know. Also, let me change my camera because it is, there we go. That's what we want. Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, is it just Western canon? I'm gonna ask Google. Define literary classic. A master of art, literature, and music that has stood the test of time. That's easy. Yeah, I had to do this last second. I forgot to schedule a stream last night. It was busy. It's been a busy week. Yeah, if you're still reading it 100 years later, that's a classic. Honestly, that's a good definition of a classic. If you're still reading it 100 years later, it's probably a classic. There's things that are more classic than others. I want to do The Little Prince soon. I'm also thinking of, because people were talking about the Count of Monte Cristo in the Discord. I'm thinking about that soon, not crazy soon, but probably soon, sometime soon. And I'm trying to think of how to actually read that, because that would be some of these books, redoing live reads of every single chapter would be insane. For some of these, because we're probably going to do everything unabridged. For some of these unabridged versions of things, it would probably be legitimately insane to try to read some of these unabridged versions. So I'm curious. I'm considering dropping some of the live reads for every single book. Like maybe we'll do like the beginning, maybe we'll do the end, maybe we'll do a few chapters here and there. But then maybe we just all read it on our own time and then discuss things in the Discord and videos and stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out how to do that, because I'd be kind of down to read, but it would take so long to do a book like the Count of Monte Cristo. We could definitely do it, but I'm just trying to think in my head what the best plan of action is, what the best plan of attack is. Sorry, I'm trying to set something else up. I'm also probably going to read Dune pretty soon. Not on this channel. This is on my very unpopular channel. It's called First Time Readers. I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl on that channel right now. And that's just going to be all my fun reads. I have a Game of Thrones one, that one's becoming more consistent. Lord of the Rings one, obviously, the classics one, Harry Potter one that I kind of just post once every 2 weeks, and then this one, and then just a normal one that I'm reading like fun books on, and I think I'm gonna do Dune on that channel. Because I really want to read at least the first 2 books before the movie comes out. I think that would be a fun book to discuss. I feel like the themes in that book are pretty heavy. Oh, Wesley, you're so cute. So that's gonna be my plan. Probably A Tale of Two Cities after the Scarlet Pimpernel. That's my guess. Because I really want to do a Dickens, and I think that's probably the best one to do, with like the French Revolution. Is that his most popular work? What is Dickens' most popular work other than A Christmas Carol? I'm going to ask AI. What is Dickens' most popular work? Christmas Carol, obviously. Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, Tale of Two Cities, David Copperfield. Give me the amount of copies sold. We'll do that. You went and watched the Scarlet Pimpernel movie the other night because you kept having scenes playing in your head during the reading. Christmas Carol is the highest. Great Expectations. Then A Tale of Two Cities. Widely cited as one of the best novels ever. Best-selling novels ever. With 200 million copies sold worldwide. We're going to do 2 Dickens books. Maybe we'll do the thing of we do 2 Dickens and 2 Austens every year until we run out of them. Which should take a while. Yeah, honestly, I love the Dune movies. The new ones. I know that's kind of controversial because a lot of people who read the books hate them. But I think that they're excellent movies. My hair's all over the place. And I'm very excited for the 3rd one. The Pimpernel Smith? Yeah, these are all old movies. I kind of want to do... I've been debating doing the Count of Monte Cristo maybe a little bit sooner rather than later, because there is there a BBC series coming out, or there's a BBC series already out. Count of Monte Cristo, BBC. This is an old one. We don't want the old one. When is it coming out? Is it out already? It's already been out in the UK. Interesting. Okay. Well, there goes that. Oh yeah, it's already out. Available for 895 days. Wow. It's a lot. I wonder if it's any good. We got to get out of French pronunciation novels, though. That's the one thing that I'm having an issue with. We'll do Tale of Two Cities, and then I got to get out of the French for a bit. I can't pronounce French words. We all know that. All right, everyone. I'm going to start reading because we're limited on time today. We're going to try as best as we can to do 5 chapters. We'll see how that goes. Everyone, get something to drink. Sit back, relax. Count of Monte Cristo would be bad then. A lot of French words. Oh no. Oh no. All right. Here we go. This is chapter 16. Richmond. A few minutes later, she was sitting. I gotta clear my throat. Wrapped in costly furs near Sir Percy Blakeney on the box seat of his magnificent coach. and the four splendid bays had thundered down the quiet street. The night was warm, in spite of the gentle breeze, which fanned Marguerite's burning cheeks. Soon London houses were left behind, and rattling over old Hammersmith Bridge. Sir Percy was driving his bays rapidly toward Richmond. The river wound in and out in its pretty delicate curves, looking like a silver serpent beneath the glittering rays of the moon. Long shadows from overhanging trees spread occasional deep palls right across the road. The bays were rushing along at breakneck speed, but held but slightly back by Sir Percy's strong, unerring hands. These nightly drives after balls and suppers in London were a source of perpetual delight to Marguerite, and she appreciated her husband's eccentricity keenly, which caused him to adopt this mode of taking her home every night to their beautiful home by the river, instead of living in a stuffy London house. He loved driving his spirited horses along the lonely, moonlit roads, and she loved to sit at the box seat, with the soft air of an English late summer's night fanning her face after the hot atmosphere of a ball or supper party. The drive was not a long one, less than an hour, sometimes, when the bays were very fresh, and Sir Percy gave them full rein. Tonight he seemed to have a very devil in his fingers, and the coach seemed to fly along the road beside the river. As usual, he did not speak to her, but stared straight in front of him. The ribbons seemed to lie quite loose in his slender white hands. Marguerite looked at him tentatively once or twice. She could see his handsome profile, and one lazy eye with its straight fine brows and drooping heavy lid. The face in the moonlight looked singularly earnest, and recalled to Marguerite's aching heart those happy days of courtship before he had become the lazy nincompoop, the effete fop whose life seemed spent in card and supper rooms. But now, in the moonlight, she could not catch the expression of the lazy blue eyes. She could only see the outline of the firm chin, the corner of the strong mouth, the well-cut massive shape of the forehead. Truly, nature had meant well by Sir Percy. His faults must all be laid at the door of that poor, half-crazed mother, of the distracted, heartbroken father, neither of whom had cared for the young life which was sprouting up between them, and which perhaps their very carelessness was already beginning to wreck. Marguerite suddenly felt intense sympathy for her husband. The moral crisis she had just gone through made her feel indulgent toward the faults, the delinquencies of others. How thoroughly a human being can be buffeted and overmastered by fate, and been borne in upon with appalling force. Had anyone told her a week ago that she would stoop to spy upon her friends, that she would betray a brave, unsuspecting man into the hands of a relentless enemy, she would have laughed the idea to scorn. Yet she had done these things. Anon, perhaps the death of that brave man would be at her door, just as 2 years ago the Marquis de Saint Cyr had perished through a thoughtless word of hers. But in that case, she was morally innocent. She had meant no serious harm. Fate merely had stepped in. But this time she had done a thing that obviously was base, had done it deliberately, for a motive which perhaps high moralists would not even appreciate. And she felt her husband's strong arm beside her. She also felt how much more he would dislike and despise her if he knew of this night's work. Thus, human beings judge one another superficially, casually, throwing contempt on one another, but with little reason and no charity. She despised her husband for his inanities and vulgar, unintellectual occupations, and he, she felt, would despise her still worse, because she had not been strong enough to do right for right's sake, and to sacrifice her brother to the dictates of her conscience. Buried in her thoughts, Marguerite had found this hour in the breezy summer night all too brief, and it was with a feeling of keen disappointment that she suddenly realized that the bays had turned into the massive gates of her beautiful English home. Sir Percy Blakeney's house on the river has become a historic one. Palatial in its dimensions, it stands in the midst of exquisitely laid out gardens, with a picturesque terrace and frontage to the river. Built in the Tudor days, the old red brick of the walls looked eminently picturesque in the midst of a bower of green. The beautiful lawn, with its old sundial adding to the true note of harmony to its foreground. Great secular trees lent cool shadows to the grounds, and now on this warm early autumn light the leaves slightly turned to russet and gold. The old garden looked singularly poetic and peaceful in the moonlight. With unerring precision, Sir Percy had brought the 4 bays to a standstill immediately in front of the fine Elizabethan entrance hall. In spite of the lateness of the hour, an army of grooms seemed to have emerged from the very grounds as the coach had thundered up, and were standing respectively round. Sir Percy jumped down quickly, then helped Marguerite to alight. She lingered outside for a moment, whilst he gave a few orders to one of his men. She skirted the house and stepped onto the lawn. Looking out dreamily into the silver landscape, nature seemed exquisitely at peace in comparison with the tumultuous emotions she had gone through. She could faintly hear the ripple of the river, and the occasional soft ghost-like fall of a dead leaf from a tree. All else was quiet round her. She had heard the horses prancing as they were being led away to the distant stables, the hurrying of servants' feet as they had gone within to rest. The house also was quite still. In 2 separate suites of apartments, just above the magnificent reception rooms, lights were still burning. They were her rooms, and his, well divided from each other by the whole width of the house, as far apart as her own lives had become. Involuntarily she sighed at that moment. She could not really have told why. She was suffering from unconquerable heartache. Deeply and achingly, she was sorry for herself. Never had she felt so pitiably lonely, so bitterly in want of comfort and of sympathy. With another sigh, she turned away from the river toward the house, vaguely wondering if, after such a night, she could ever find rest and sleep. Suddenly, before she reached the terrace, she heard a firm step upon the crisp gravel, and the next moment her husband's figure emerged out of the shadow. He too had skirted the house, and was wandering along the lawn toward the river. He still wore his heavy driving coat, with the numerous lapels and collars he himself had set in fashion, but he had thrown it all well back, burying his hands, as was his wont, in the deep pockets of his satin breeches. The gorgeous white costume he had worn at Lord Grenville's ball, with its jabot and priceless lace, looked strangely ghostly against the dark background of the house. He apparently did not notice her, for after a few moments' pause, he presently turned back toward the house and walked straight up to the terrace. Sir Percy. He already had one foot on the lowest of the terrace steps, but at her voice he started and paused, then looking searchingly into the shadows whence she had called him. She came forward quickly into the moonlight, and as soon as he saw her, he said with that air of consummate gallantry he always wore when speaking to her, "At your service, madame." But his foot was still on the step, and in his whole attitude there was a remote suggestion distinctly visible to her that he wished to go, and had no desire for a midnight interview. "The air is deliciously cool," she said, "the moonlight peaceful and poetic, and the garden inviting. Will you not stay in it a while? The hour is not yet late. Or is my company so distasteful to you that you are in a hurry to rid yourself of it?" "Nay, madame," he rejoined placidly, "but 'tis on the other foot the shoe happens to be. I'll warrant you'll find the midnight air more poetic without my company. No doubt the sooner I remove the obstruction, the better your ladyship will like it." He turned once more to go. "I protest you mistake me, Sir Percy," she said hurriedly, and drawing a little closer to him, "the estrangement which, alas, has arisen between us, was none of my making, remember." Begad, you must pardon me there, madame, he protested coldly. My memory was always of the shortest. He looked her straight in the eyes, with that lazy nonchalance which had become second nature to him. She returned his gaze for a moment. Then her eyes softened as she came up quite close to him, to the foot of the terrace steps. Of the shortest, Sir Percy, faith, how it must have altered. Was it 3 years ago or 4 that you saw me for 1 hour in Paris on your way to the east? When you came back 2 years later, you had not forgotten me. She looked divinely pretty as she stood there in the moonlight, with the fur cloak sliding off her beautiful shoulders, the gold embroidery on her dress shimmering around her, her childlike blue eyes turned up fully on him. He stood for a moment rigid and still, but for the clenching of his hand against the stone balustrade of the terrace. You desired my presence, madame, he said frigidly. I take it that it was not with a view to indulging in tender reminiscences. His voice certainly was cold and uncompromising. His attitude before her stiff and unbending. Womanly decorum would have suggested that Marguerite should return coldness for coldness, and should sweep past him without another word. Only with a curt nod of the head, but womanly instinct suggested that she should remain. That keen instinct, which makes a beautiful woman conscious of her powers long to bring to her knees the one man who pays her no homage. She stretched out her hand to him. Nay, Sir Percy, why not? The present is not so glorious, but that I should not wish to dwell a little in the past. He bent his tall figure, and taking hold of the extreme tip of the fingers which she still held to him, he kissed them ceremoniously. "I faith, madam," he said, "then you will pardon me if my dull wits cannot accompany you there." Sir Percy. Hold on. Once again he attempted to go. Once more her voice, sweet childlike, almost tender, called him back. Sir Percy. Your servant, madame. Is it possible that love can die? She said with a sudden unreasoning vehemence. Methought that the passion which you once felt for me would outlast the span of human life. Is there nothing left of that love, Percy, which might help you to bridge over that sad estrangement? His massive figure seemed, while she spoke thus to him, to stiffen still more. The strong mouth hardened. A look of relentless obstinacy crept into the habitually lazy blue eyes. With what object, I pray you, madame? He asked coldly. I do not understand you. A little trouble in paradise over here. Yet 'tis simple enough, he said, with sudden bitterness, which seemed literally to surge through his words, though he was making visible efforts to suppress it. I humbly put the question to you, for my slow wits are unable to grasp the cause of this, your ladyship's sudden new mood. Is it that you have a taste to renew the devilish sport which you played so successfully last year? Do you wish to see me once more like a lovesick suppliant at your feet, so that you might again have the pleasure of kicking me aside, like a troublesome lapdog? She had succeeded in arousing him for the moment, and again she looked straight at him, for it was thus she remembered him a year ago. Percy, I entreat you, she whispered, we cannot bury the past. Pardon me, madame, but I understood you to say that your desire was to dwell in it. Nay, I spoke not of that past, Percy, she said, while a tone of tenderness crept into her voice. Rather, I did speak of the time you loved me still, and I was vain and frivolous. Your wealth and position allured me. I married you, hoping in my heart that your great love for me would beget in me a love for you. But alas! The moon had sunk low behind a bank of clouds. In the east, a soft gray light was beginning to chase away the heavy mantle of the night. He could only see her graceful outline now, the small queenly head, with its wealth of reddish golden curls, and the glittering gems forming the small star-shaped red flower which she wore as a diadem in her hair. 24 hours after our marriage, madame, the Marquis de St. Cyr and all his family perished on the guillotine, and the popular rumor reached me that it was the wife of Sir Percy Blakeney who helped to send him there. Nay, I told you the truth of that odious tale, not till after it had been recounted to me by strangers with all its horrible details. And you believe them then and there, she said with great vehemence. Without a proof or question, you believe that I, whom you vowed to love more than life, whom you professed you worshipped, that I could do a thing so base as these strangers choose to recount. You thought I meant to deceive you about it all, though that I ought to have spoken before I married you. Yet had you listened, I would have told you that up to the very morning on which Saint Cyr went to the guillotine, I was straining every nerve, using every influence I possessed to save him and his family. But my pride sealed my lips, when your love seemed to perish, as if under the knife of that same guillotine. Yet I would have told you how I was duped. I, whom the same popular rumor had endowed with the sharpest wits in France. I was tricked into doing this thing by men who knew how to play upon my love for an only brother, and my desire for revenge. Was it unnatural? Her voice became choked with tears. She paused for a moment or two, trying to regain some sort of composure. She looked appealingly at him, almost as if he were her judge. He had allowed her to speak on in her own vehemence, impassioned way, offering no comment, no word of sympathy. And now, while she paused, trying to swallow down the hot tears that gushed to her eyes, he waited, impassive and still. The dim gray light of the early dawn seemed to make his tall form look taller and more rigid. The lazy, good-natured face looked strangely altered. Marguerite, excited as she was, could see that the eyes were no longer languid, his mouth no longer good-humored and inane. A curious look of intense passion seemed to glow from beneath his drooping lids. The mouth was tightly closed, lips compressed as if the will alone held the surging passion in check. Marguerite Blakeney was, above all, a woman with all a woman's fascinating foibles, all a woman's most lovable sins. She knew in a moment that for the past few months she had been mistaken, that this man who stood here before her, cold as a statue when her musical voice struck upon his ear, loved her as he loved her a year ago. That his passion might have been dormant, but that it was there, as strong, as intense, as overwhelming as when her lips met his in one long, maddening kiss. Pride had kept him from her, and womanlike, she meant to win back that conquest which had been hers before. Suddenly it seemed to her that the only happiness life could ever hold for her again would be in feeling that man's kiss once more upon her lips. Dang, this is turning into a love story. This is a weird love story, though. Like, I don't know. It's like she wants his affection, and now she's like trying to win it back by, I don't know. I don't know how she's trying to win it back. Just by being winsome, by like loving it back. It's weird. Oh yeah, like the stream, everyone. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, the truths are coming out after years of misunderstanding, for sure. But it's still weird to me. Like, what is she trying to do? I don't know. Like, she didn't really have that much affection for him. She liked the idea of the marriage because he would adore her. And now that he doesn't adore her, that bothers her. So then she just tries to get him back so that he can keep adoring her. It doesn't seem great to me. But it's like, you know, somewhat sweet, I guess. They're like falling in love, I guess. Maybe she's going to get changed. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Maybe a little bit. Like, it seems like she's actually understanding that she desires a companion rather than just to be adored. Because I think her main motive is she sees the two bedrooms far apart in the house, and she wants a companion that she can talk to and that can console her and help her. So she wants a companion now. So it's much better. But it still has some of that oldness to it. Hmm. Maybe his turning away made her love him. It's not the greatest reason, but I agree with you. But it makes her a little suspicious in my head. Like, I don't know if many guys want that love. I don't know if any people want that kind of love. Although literature really romanticizes that kind of love. Anyway, let's keep reading. Listen to the tale, Sir Percy, she said, and her voice was now low, sweet, infinitely tender. Armand was all in all to me. We had no parents and brought up one another. He was my little father and I his tiny mother. We loved one another. Then one day, do you mind me, Sir Percy? The Marquis de St. Cyr had my brother Armand thrashed by his lackeys. Lackeys? That brother whom I loved better than all the world. And his offense? That he, a plebeian, had dared to love the daughter of an aristocrat. For that he was waylaid and thrashed like a dog within an inch of his life. Oh, how I suffered his humiliation had eaten into my very soul. When the opportunity occurred, I was able to take my revenge. I took it. But I only thought to bring that proud marquis to trouble and humiliation. He plotted with Austria against his own country. Chance gave me knowledge of this. I spoke of it, but I did not know. How could I guess? They trapped and duped me. When I realized what I had done, it was too late. It is perhaps a little difficult, madame, said Sir Percy after a moment of silence between them, to go back over the past. I have confessed to you that my memory is short, but the thought certainly lingered in my mind that at the time of the Marquis's death I entreated you for an explanation of those same noisome popular rumors. If that same memory does not, even now, play me a trick, I fancy that you refuse me all explanation then, and demand of my love a humiliating allegiance it was not prepared to give. I wish to test your love for me, and it did not bear the test. You used to tell me that you drew the very breath of life but for me, and for love of me. And to probe that love, you demanded that I should forfeit mine honor, he said, whilst gradually his impassiveness seemed to leave him, his rigidity to relax, that I should accept without murmur or question as a dumb and submissive slave every act of my mistress. My heart's overflowing with love and passion. I asked for no explanation. I waited for one, not doubting, only hoping. Had you spoken but one word, from you I would have accepted any explanation and believed it. But you left me without a word, beyond a bald confession of the actual horrible facts. Proudly you returned to your brother's house and left me alone. For weeks, not knowing now in whom to believe, since the shrine which contained my one illusion lay shattered to earth at my feet. She need not complain now that he was cold and impassive. His very voice shook with an intensity of passion, which he was making superhuman efforts to keep in check. Ah, the madness of my pride, she said sadly. Hardly had I gone. Already I had repented. And when I returned, I found you, oh, so altered, wearing already that mask of solemn indifference which you have never laid aside until now. She was so close to him, her soft, loose hair wafted against his cheek, her eyes glowing with tears, maddening him. The music in her voice sent fire through his veins. But he would not yield to the magic charm of this woman, whom he had loved so deeply, at whose hands his pride had suffered so bitterly. He closed his eyes to shut out the dainty visions of that sweet face, of that snow-white neck and graceful figure, round which the faint rosy light of dawn was just beginning to hover playfully. Nay, madame, it is no mask, he said icily. I swore to you, once that my life was yours. For months now it has been your plaything. It has served its purpose. But now she knew that the very coldness was a mask. The trouble, the sorrow she had gone through last night suddenly came back to her mind, but no longer with bitterness, rather with a feeling that this man who loved her would help her to bear the burden. Sir Percy, she said impulsively, heaven knows that you have been at pains to make the task which I had set to myself terribly difficult to accomplish. You spoke of my mood just now. Well, we will call it that, if you will. I wish to speak to you because I was in trouble and had need of your sympathy. It is yours to command, madame. How cold you are, she sighed. Faith, I can scarcely believe that but a few months ago One tear in my eye had set you well nigh crazy. Now I come to you with half a broken heart, and I pray you, madame, he said, whilst his voice shook almost as much as hers. In what way can I serve you? Percy, Armand is in deadly danger. A letter of his, rash, impetuous as were all his actions, and written to Sir Andrew Ffoulkes, has fallen into the hands of a fanatic. Armand is hopelessly comprised. Tomorrow, perhaps, he will be arrested. After that, the guillotine, unless, oh, it is horrible, she said, with a sudden wail of anguish, as all the events of the past night came rushing back to her mind. Horrible. And you do not understand. You cannot. And I have no one to whom I can turn for help, or even for sympathy. Tears now refused to be held back. All her trouble, her struggles, the awful uncertainty of Armand's fate overwhelmed her. She tottered, ready to fall, and leaning against the stone balustrade, she buried her face in her hands and sobbed bitterly. At first mention of Armand St. Just's name, the peril in which he stood, St. Percy's face had become a shade more pale, and the look of determination and obstinacy appeared more marked than ever between his eyes. However, he said nothing for the moment, but watched her, as her delicate frame was shaken with sobs, watched her until unconsciously his face softened, and what looked almost like tears seemed to glisten in his eyes. And so, he said with bitter sarcasm, the murderous dog of that revolution is turning upon the very hands that fed it. Begad, madam, he added very gently, as Marguerite continued to sob hysterically, will you dry your tears? I never could bear to see a pretty woman cry. And I, instinctively, with sudden overmastering passion, at the sight of her helplessness and of her grief, he stretched out his arms, and the next would have seized her and held her to him, protected from every evil with his very life, his very heart's blood. But pride had the better of it in his struggle once again. He restrained himself with a tremendous effort of will, and said coldly, though still very gently, will you not turn to me, madame, and tell me in what way I may have the honor to serve you? This is a little rough. She made a violent effort to control herself, and turning her tear-stained face to him, she once more held out her hand, which he kissed with the same punctilious gallantry. But Marguerite's fingers this time lingered in his hand for just a second or two longer than was absolutely necessary. And this was because she had felt that his hand trembled perceptibly and was burning hot, whilst his lips felt as cold as marble. Can you do aught for Armand? She said sweetly and simply. You have so much influence at court, so many friends. Nay, madame. Should you not rather seek the influence of your French friend, Monsieur Chauvelin? His extends, if I mistake not, even as far as a Republican government of France. I cannot ask him, Percy. Oh, I wish I dared to tell you, but he has put a price on my brother's head, which she would have given all worlds, if she had felt the courage then to tell him everything. All she had done that night, how she had suffered and how her hand had been forced, but she dared not give away that impulse, not now, when she was just beginning to feel that he still loved her, when she hoped that she could win him back. She dared not make another confession to him. After all, he might not understand. He might not sympathize with her struggles and temptation. His love, still dormant, might sleep the sleep of death. It's interesting because this is the moment that if she actually tells him, then he probably would truly fall in love with her at this moment. In a weird way. Perhaps he divined what was passing in her mind. His whole attitude was one of intense longing, a veritable prayer for that confidence which her foolish pride withheld from him. When she remained silent, he sighed, and said with marked coldness, Faith, madame, since it distresses you, we will not speak of it. As for Armand, I pray you have no fear. I pledge you my word that he shall be safe. Now, have I your permission to go? The hour is getting late, and will you at least accept my gratitude, she said, as she drew quite close to him, and speaking with real tenderness. With a quick, almost involuntary effort, he would have taken her then in his arms, for her eyes were swimming in tears, which he longed to kiss away, but she had lured him at once. She had lured him once just like this, then cast him aside in an ill-fitting love. He thought this was but a mood, a caprice, and he was too proud to lend himself to it once again. It is too soon, madame, he said quietly. I have done nothing as yet. The hour is late, and you must be fatigued. Your women will be waiting for you upstairs. He stood aside to allow her to pass. She sighed, a quick sigh of disappointment. His pride and her beauty had been in direct conflict, and his pride had remained the conqueror. Perhaps, after all, she had been deceived just now. What she took to be the light of love in his eyes might only have been the passion of pride, or who knows, of hatred instead of love. She stood looking at him for a moment or two longer. He was again as rigid, as impassive as before. Pride had conquered, and he cared not for her. The gray of dawn was gradually yielding to the rosy light of the rising sun. Birds began to twitter. Nature awakened, smiling in happy response to the warmth of this glorious October morning. Only between these two hearts there lay a strong, impassable barrier, built up of pride on both sides, which neither of them cared to be the first to demolish. He had bent his tall figure in a low ceremonious bow, as she finally, with another bitter little sigh, began to mount the terrace steps. The long train of her gold-embroidered gown swept the dead leaves off the steps, making a faint, harmonious shh as she glided up. With one hand resting on the balustrade, the rosy light of dawn making an aureola of gold around her hair and causing the rubies of her head and arms to sparkle. She reached the tall glass doors which led him into the house. Before entering, she paused once again to look at him, hoping against hope to see his arm stretched out to her, to hear his voice calling her back. He had not moved. His massive figure looked the very personification of unbending pride, of fierce obstinacy. Hot tears again surged to her eyes, but she would not let him see them. She turned quickly within and ran as fast as she could up to her own rooms. Had she but turned back then and looked out once more onto the rose-lit garden, she would have seen that which have made her own suffering seem but light and easy to bear. A strong man, overwhelmed with his own passions and his own despair. Pride had given way at last. Obstinacy was gone. The will was powerless, but he was a man madly, blindly, passionately in love. And as soon as her light footsteps had died within the house, he knelt down upon the terrace steps, and in the madness of his love, he kissed one by one the places where her small foot had trodden, and the stone balustrade there, where her tiny hand had rested last. Man, will they just communicate? Like, come on. Too proud. Ay, ay, ay. All right. I know, so dramatic, the melodrama. It's crazy. All right, next chapter, chapter 17. Farewell. When Marguerite reached her room, she found her maid terribly anxious about her. Your ladyship will be so tired, said the poor one, whose eyes were half closed with sleep. It is past 5 o'clock. Ah, yes, Louise, I dare say I shall be too tired presently, said Marguerite kindly. But you are very tired now. So go to bed at once. I'll get into bed alone. But my lady... Now don't argue, Louise, but go to bed. Give me a wrap and leave me alone. Louise was only too glad to obey. She took off her mistress's gorgeous ball dress and wrapped her up in a soft, billowy gown. Does your ladyship wish for anything else? She asked, when that was done. No, nothing more. Put out the lights as you go out. Yes, my lady. Good night. Good night, my lady. Good night, Louise. When the maid was gone, Marguerite drew aside the curtains and threw open the windows. The garden and the river beyond were flooding with rosy light. Far away into the east, the rays of the rising sun had changed into a rose of vivid gold. The lawn was deserted now. and Marguerite looked down upon the terrace where she had stood a few moments ago, trying vainly to win back a man's love, which had been so wholly hers. It was strange that though all her troubles, all her anxiety for Armand, she was mostly conscious at the present moment of a keen and bitter heartache. Her very limbs seemed to ache with longing for the love of a man who had spurned her, who had resisted her tenderness, remained cold to her appeals, and had not responded to the glow of passion, which had caused her to feel and hope that those happy olden days in Paris were not all dead and forgotten. How strange it was she loved him still. And now that she looked back upon the last few months of misunderstanding and loneliness, she realized that she had never ceased to love him, that deep down in her heart, she had always vaguely felt that his foolish inanities, his empty laugh, his lazy nonchalance were nothing but a mask. That the real man, strong, passionate, willful, was there still. The man she had loved, whose intensity had fascinated her, whose personality attracted her, since she always felt that behind his apparent slow wits, there was a certain something, which he kept hidden from all the world, and most especially from her. A woman's heart is such a complex problem. The owner thereof is often most incompetent to find the solution to this puzzle. Did Marguerite Blakeney, the cleverest woman in Europe, really love a fool? Was it love that she had felt for him a year ago when she married him? Was it love she felt for him now that she realized that he still loved her, but that he would not become her slave, her passionate, ardent lover once again? Nay, Marguerite herself could not have told that. Not at this moment, at any rate. Perhaps her pride had sealed her mind against a better understanding of her own heart. But this she did not know, that she meant to capture that obstinate heart back, that she would conquer once more, and then she would never lose him again. She would keep him, keep his love, deserve it, and cherish it. For this much was certain, that there was no longer any happiness possible for her without that one man's love. Interesting. It is transitioning to something a little bit better with her, I think. I'm liking her more as a character. Thus the most contradictory thoughts and emotions rushed madly through her mind, absorbed in them. She had allowed this time to slip by, perhaps. Tired out with long excitement, she had actually closed her eyes and sunk into a troubled sleep, wherein quickly fleeting dreams seemed but the continuation of her anxious thoughts, when suddenly she was roused, from dream or meditation, by the noise of footsteps outside her door. Nervously she jumped up and listened. The house itself was still as ever. The footsteps had retreated. Through her wide open windows, the brilliant rays of the morning sun were flooding her room with light. She looked up at the clock. It was 6:30, too early for any of her household to be already astir. I think one of my neighbors has some kind of heavy equipment that is just buzzing outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's annoying. It sounds like a helicopter far away that's just circling or something like that. It's driving me crazy right now. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Let's keep reading. Nervously she jumped and listened. The house itself was as still as ever. The footsteps had retreated. Oh, I already read that. She certainly must have dropped asleep quite unconsciously. The noise of the footsteps, also of hushed, subdued voices, had awakened her. What could they be? Gently, on tiptoe, she crossed the room and opened the door to listen. Not a sound. That peculiar stillness of the early morning when sleep with all mankind is at its heaviest. But the noise had made her nervous, and when suddenly, at her feet, on the very doorsteps, she saw something white lying there, a letter evidently. She hardly dared touch it. It seemed so ghost-like. It certainly was not there when she came upstairs. Had Louise dropped it? Or was some tantalizing spook at play, showing her fairy letters where none existed? At last she stooped to pick it up. In amaze, puzzled beyond measure, she saw that the letter was addressed to herself in her husband's large business-like looking hand. What could he have to say to her in the middle of the night, which could not be put off until the morning? She tore open the envelope and read, "A most unforeseen circumstance forces me to leave for the North immediately." The North. "So I beg your ladyship's pardon if you do not avail myself the honor of bidding you goodbye. My business may keep me employed for about a week, so I shall not have the privilege of being present at your ladyship's water party on Wednesday. I remain your ladyship's most humble and most obedient servant, Percy Blakeney." Marguerite must suddenly have been imbued with her husband's slowness of intellect, for she had perforce to read the few simple lines over and over again before she could fully grasp their meaning. She stood on the landing, turning over and over in her hand this curt and mysterious epistle, her mind a blank, her nerves strained with agitation and presentiment she could not very well have explained. Sir Percy owned considerable property in the North, certainly, and he had often before gone there alone and stayed away a week at a time, but it seemed so very strange that circumstance should have arisen between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning that compelled him to start in this extreme hurry. Vainly she tried to shake off the unaccustomed feeling of nervousness. She was trembling from head to foot. A wild, unconquerable desire seized her to see her husband again at once, if only he had not already stated. Forgetting the fact that she was only very lightly clad in morning wrap and that her hair lay loosely about her shoulders, she flew down the stairs right through the hall toward the front door. It was as usual barred and bolted, for the indoor servants were not up yet, but her keen ears had detected the sound of voices and the pawing of a horse's hoof against the flagstones. With nervous, trembling fingers, Marguerite undid the bolts one by one, bruising her hands, hurting her fingernails, for the locks were very heavy and stiff. But she did not care. Her whole frame shook with anxiety at the very thought that she might be too late, that he might have gone without her seeing him and bidding him Godspeed. At last she had turned the key and thrown open the door. Her ears had not deceived her. A groom was standing close by, holding a couple of horses. One of these was Sultan, Percy's favorite and swiftest horse, saddled ready for a journey. The next moment Sir Percy himself appeared round the corner of the house and came quickly toward the horses. He had changed his gorgeous ball costume, but was as usually irreproachably and richly apparelled in a suit of fine cloth, with lace, jabot, and ruffles, high-top boots, and riding breeches. Marguerite went forward a few steps. He looked and saw her. A slight frown appeared between his eyes. "You are going," she said quickly and feverishly. "Whither?" "As I have had the honor of informing your ladyship, urgent, most unexpected business calls me to the North this morning," he said, in his usual cold, drawly manner. "But your guests tomorrow?" "I have prayed your ladyship to offer my humble excuse to His Royal Highness. You are such a perfect hostess, I do not think that I shall be missed." "But surely you might have waited for your journey until after our water party," she said, still speaking quickly and nervously. "Surely the business is not so urgent, and you said nothing about it just now." "My business, as I had the honor to tell you, madame, is as unexpected as it is urgent. May I therefore crave your permission to go? Can I do aught for you in town, on my way back?" No, thanks, nothing." "But you will be back soon?" "Very soon." "Before the end of the week?" "I cannot say." He was evidently trying to get away, whilst she was straining every nerve to keep him back for a moment or two. "Percy," she said, "will you not tell me why you go today? Surely I, as your wife, have the right to know." "You have not been called away to the North. I know it. There were no letters, no couriers from there before we left for the opera party last night. And nothing was waiting for you when we returned from the ball. You are not going to the North. I feel convinced there is some mystery. And come on, Marguerite, put the mystery together." It's interesting because I was in my head going, I hope that she actually figures this out and she's like not that dumb that she isn't going to be able to figure this out. And I'm glad that she is. "Nay, there is no mystery, madame," he replied with a slight tone of impatience. "My business has to do with Armand there. Now, have I your leave to depart?" Dang, he just says it outright. "With Armand? But you will run no danger." "Danger, I? Nay, madame. Your solicitude does me honor. As you say, I have some influence. My intention is to exert it before it be too late. Will you allow me to thank you at least?" "Nay, madame," he said coldly, "there is no need for that. My life is at your service, and I am already more than repaid." "And mine will be at yours, Sir Percy, if you will but accept it, in exchange for what you do for Armand," she said, as impulsively. She stretched out both her hands to him. There, I will not detain you. My thoughts go with you. Farewell. How lovely she looked in the morning sunlight, with her ardent hair streaming around her shoulders. He bowed very low and kissed her hands. She felt the burning kiss, and her heart thrilled with joy and hope. You will come back, she said tenderly. Very soon, he replied, looking longingly into her blue eyes. And you will remember? She asked, as her eyes, in response to his look, gave him an infinity of promise. I will always remember, madame, that you have honored me by commanding my services. The words were cold and formal, but they did not chill her this time. Her woman's heart had read his, beneath the impassive mask of his pride still forced him to wear. He bowed to her again, then begged her to leave to depart. She stood on the one side whilst he jumped on to Sultan's back. Then, as he galloped out of the gates, she waved him a final adieu. A bend in the road soon hid him from view. His confidential groom had some difficulty in keeping pace with him, for Sultan flew along in response to his master's excited mood. Marguerite, with a sigh that was almost a happy one, turned and went within. She went back to her room, for suddenly, like a tired child, she felt quite sleepy. Her heart seemed all at once to be in complete peace, and though it still ached with undefined longing, a vague and delicious hope soothed it as with a balm. She felt no longer anxious about Armand. The man who had just ridden away, bent on helping her brother, inspired her with complete confidence in his strength and in his power. She marveled at herself for ever having looked at him as an inane fool. Of course, that was a mask, worn to hide the bitter wounds she had dealt to his faith and to his love. His passion would have overmastered him, and he would not let her see how much he still cared and how deeply he suffered. But now all would be well. She would crush her own pride, humble it before him, tell him everything, trust him in everything, and those happy days would come back when they used to wander off together in the forests of Fontainebleau, when they spoke little, for he was always a silent man. But when she felt that against that strong heart, she would always find rest and happiness. The more she thought of the events of the past night, the less fear had she of Chauvelin and his schemes. Had he failed to discover the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel? Oh, that she felt sure. Both Lord Fancourt and Chauvelin himself had assured her that no one had been in the dining room at 1 o'clock except the Frenchman himself and Percy. Yes, Percy. She might have asked him. Had she thought of it? Anyway, she had no fear that the unknown of the brave hero would fall in Chauvelin's trap. His death, at any rate, would not be at her door. Armand certainly was still in danger, but Percy had pledged his word that Armand would be safe, and somehow, as Marguerite had seen him riding away, the possibility that he could fail in whatever he undertook never even remotely crossed her mind. When Armand was safely over in England, she would not allow him to go back to France. She felt almost happy now, and drawing the curtains closely together again to shut out the piercing sun, she went to bed at last, laid her head upon the pillow, and like a weary child, soon fell into a peaceful and dreamless sleep. Yeah, I feel like the puzzle pieces are coming together for her a little bit. Like they're there. The puzzle pieces are getting overturned. She's actually able to see some of the picture, but she's still not putting everything together, which is kind of funny. I'm running out of time a little bit. I might have time for like maybe 1-2 more chapters. So let's try to speed read this next one. Chapter 20. Oh, what is this? Chapter 18. Chapter 18. The day was well advanced when Marguerite awoke. Refreshed by her long sleep, Louise had brought her some fresh milk and a dish of fruit, and she partook of this frugal breakfast with hearty appetite. Thoughts crowded thick and fast in her mind, and she munched her grapes. Most of them went galloping away after the tall, erect figure of her husband, whom she had watched riding out of sight more than 5 hours ago. In answer to her eager inquiries, Louise brought back the news that the groom had come home with Sultan, having left Sir Percy in London. The groom thought that his master was about to get on board in it, and his schooner, which was lying just off below London Bridge. Sir Percy had ridden thus far, and then met Briggs, the skipper of the Daydream, and had sent the groom back to Richmond with Sultan and in the empty saddle. The news puzzled Marguerite more than ever. Where could Sir Percy be going just now in the daydream? On Armand's behalf, he had said. Well, Sir Percy had influential friends everywhere. Perhaps he was going to Greenwich. But Marguerite ceased to conjecture. All would be explained anon. He said that he would come back and that he would remember. A long, idle day lay before Marguerite. She was expecting the visit of her old schoolfellow, little Suzanne de Tournay, with all the merry mischief at her command. She had tendered her request for Suzanne's company to the Comtesse in the presence of the Prince of Wales last night. His Royal Highness had loudly applauded the notion and declared that he would give himself the pleasure of calling the two ladies in the course of the afternoon. The Comtesse had not called on the two ladies. The Comtesse had not dared to refuse. And then there was entrapped into the promise to send little Suzanne to spend the long and happy day at Richmond with her friend. Marguerite expected her eagerly. She longed for a chat about old school days with the child. She felt that she would prefer Suzanne's company to that of anyone else, and together they would roam through the old fine garden and rich deer park, or stroll along the river. But Suzanne had not come yet, and Marguerite, being dressed, prepared to go downstairs. She looked quite a girl this morning, in her simple muslin frock, with a broad blue slash around her slim waist, and the dainty crossover fichu, into which, at her bosom, she had hastened a few late crimson roses. She crossed the landing outside her own suite of apartments, and stood still for a moment at the head of the fine oak staircase, which led to the lower floor. On the left, or on her left, were her husband's apartments, a suite of rooms which she practically never entered. They consisted of a bedroom, dressing and reception room, and at the extreme end of the landing, a small study which, when Sir Percy did not use it, was always kept locked. His own special and confidential valet, Frank, had charge of this room. No one was ever allowed to go inside. My lady had never cared to do so, and the other servant had, of course, not dared to break this hard and fast rule. Marguerite had often, with that good-natured contempt which she had recently adopted toward her husband, chaffed him about this secrecy which surrounded his private study. Laughingly, she had always declared how he strictly excluded all prying eyes from his sanctum, for fear they should detect how very little study went on within its four walls. A comfortable armchair for Sir Percy's sweet slumber was, no doubt, its most conspicuous piece of furniture. Marguerite thought of all this on this bright October morning, as she glanced along the corridor. Frank was evidently busy with his master's rooms, for most of the doors stood open, that of the study amongst the others. A sudden burning childish curiosity seized her to have a peep at Sir Percy's sanctum. The restriction, of course, did not apply to her, and Frank would, of course, not dare to oppose her. Still, she hoped that the valet would be busy in one of the other rooms, that she might have one quick peep in secret and unmolested. Gently, on tiptoe, she crossed the landing. Like Bluebeard's wife, trembling half with excitement and wonder, she paused a moment on the threshold, strangely perturbed and irresolute. I wonder if she's going to know, or if she's going to figure something out. That moment you love the person you marry. The door was ajar, and she could not see anything within. Wes! Hey, relax. It's okay. That's just our neighbors. It's just our neighbors. It's all right. It's just our neighbors. Come here. Come here. Wes, come here. Wes is a little freaked out by the neighbors right now. At once she was struck by the severe simplicity, or the door was ajar and she could not see anything within. She pushed it open tentatively. There was no sound. Frank was evidently not there, and she walked boldly in. At once she was struck by the severe simplicity of everything around her. The dark and heavy hangings, the massive oak furniture, then one or two maps on the wall. In no way recalled to her mind the lazy... Hey, buddy, are you coming up? Oh, this is cute. Wes is sitting on the chair right here as I read. Oh, he's a good boy. The lover of racecourses, the dandified leader of fashion. That was the outward representation of Sir Percy Blakeney. There was no sign here, at any rate, of hurried departure. Everything was in place. Not a scrap of paper littered the floor. Not a cupboard or drawer was left open. The curtains were drawn aside, and through the open window, the fresh morning air was streaming in. Facing the window, and well into the center of the room, stood a ponderous, business-like desk, which looked as if it had been much service. It's seen much service. On the wall to the left of the desk, reaching almost to the floor to the ceiling, was a large, full-length portrait of a woman, magnificently framed, exquisitely painted, and signed with the name of Boucher. It was Percy's mother. Marguerite knew very little about her, except that she died abroad, ailing in body as well as in mind, when Percy was still a lad. She must have been a very beautiful woman once, when Boucher painted her. And as Marguerite looked at the portrait, Wes, you okay, buddy? Are you a little chilly? You're a good boy. She could not be struck by the extraordinary resemblance which must have existed between mother and son. There was the same heavy, low, squared forehead, crowned with thick, fair hair, smooth and heavy. The same deep-set, somewhat lazy blue eyes beneath the firmly marked, straight brows. And in those eyes, there was the same intensity behind that apparent laziness, the same latent passion, which used to light up Percy's face in the olden days before his marriage, and which Marguerite had again noted last night at dawn, when she had come quite close to him and allowed him a note of tenderness to creep into her voice. Marguerite studied the portrait, for it interested her. After that, she turned and looked again at the ponderous desk. It was covered with a mass of papers, all neatly tied and docketed, which looked like accounts and receipts arrayed with perfect method. It had never before struck Marguerite, nor had she, alas, found it worthwhile to inquire as to how Sir Percy, whom all the world had credited with a total lack of brains, administered a vast fortune which his father had left him. Because he's Batman. Come on. Of course. She had entered this neat, orderly room. She had been taken so much by surprise that this obvious proof of her husband's strong business capacities did not cause her more than a passing thought of wonder. But it also strengthened her in the now certain knowledge that with worldly inanities, his foppish ways and foolish talk, he was not only wearing a mask, but he was playing a deliberate and studied part. Marguerite wondered again. Why should he take all this trouble? Why should he, who was obviously a serious, earnest man, wish to appear before his fellow men as an empty-headed nincompoop? He may have wished to hide his love for a wife who held him in contempt, but surely such an object could have been gained at less sacrifice, and with far less trouble than constant, incessant acting of an unnatural part. She looked round her quite aimlessly now. She was horribly puzzled, and a nameless dread before all this strange, unaccountable mystery had begun to seize upon her. She felt cold and uncomfortable. Suddenly, in this severe and dark room, there were no pictures on the wall, save the fine Boucher portrait. Only a couple of maps, both of parts of France, one of the north coast, and the other of the environs of Paris. Come on, put it together! Put it together! What did Sir Percy want with those, she wondered. Her head began to ache. She turned away from this strange Bluebeard's chamber, which she had entered and which she did not understand. She did not wish Frank to find her here. And with a last look round, she once more turned to the door. As she did so, her foot knocked against a small object, which had apparently been lying close to the desk, on the carpet, which now went rolling right across the room. She stooped to pick it up. It was a solid gold ring with a flat shield on which was engraved a small device. Marguerite turned it over in her fingers, then studied the engravings on the shield. It represented a small, star-shaped flower, of a shape she had seen so distinctly twice before, once at the opera and once at Lord Grenville's ball. Hey, put it together, Marguerite. Come on, it's right in front of your eyes. It's right there. You're so close. Wesley, are you okay, buddy? There you go. Now you're comfy. That's a good boy, bud. That's a good boy. Look at this guy. I gotta take a picture of him. Look at this. Look how cute he is. He's literally just, this is my view. That's my foot up on my chair, and that's Wes right there, just chilling. How cute is that? I love this dog. Yeah, come on. Marguerite, put it together, all right? Come on, this is crazy. All right. Another chapter. Chapter 19. Oh, he's a good boy. Wes is the cutest, guys. At one particular moment, the strange doubt first crept into Marguerite's mind. She could not herself afterward said. With the ring tightly clutched in her hand, she had run out of the room, down the stairs, and out into the garden, where, in complete seclusion, alone with the flowers and the river and the birds, she could look again at the ring and study that device more closely. Stupidly, senselessly, now sitting beneath the shade of an overhanging sycamore, she was looking at the plain gold shield with the star-shaped little flower engraved upon it. Bah, it was ridiculous. She was dreaming. Her nerves were overwrought, and she saw signs and mysteries in the most trivial coincidences. Had not everybody about town recently made a point of affecting the device of that mysterious and heroic Scarlet Pimpernel? Did she not herself wear it embroidered on her gowns, set in gems and enamel in her hair? What was there strange in the fact that Sir Percy would have chosen to use the device as a seal ring? He might easily have done that, yes, quite easily, and besides, what connection could there be between her exquisite dandy of a husband, with his fine clothes and refined, lazy ways, and the daring plotter who rescued French victims from beneath the very eyes of the leaders of a bloodthirsty revolution? Her thoughts were in a whirl, her mind a blank. She did not see anything that was going on around her, and was quite startled when a fresh young voice called to her across the garden. "Cherie, Cherie, where are you?" And little Suzanne, fresh as a rosebud, with eyes dancing with glee, and brown curls fluttering in a soft morning breeze, came running across the lawn. "They told me you were in the garden," she went on, prattling merrily, and throwing herself with pretty girlish impulse into Marguerite's arms. "So I ran out to give you a surprise. You did not expect me quite so soon, did you, my darling little Margot, Cherie?" Marguerite, who had hastily concealed the ring in the folds of her handkerchief, tried to respond gaily and unconcernedly to the young girl's impulsiveness. "Indeed, sweet one," she said with a smile, "it is delightful to have you all to myself, and for a nice long whole day. Won't you be bored? Or you won't be bored?" "Oh, bored, Margot. How can you say such a wicked thing? Why, when we were in the dear old convent together, we were always happy when we were allowed to be alone together, and to talk secrets." The two young girls had linked their arms in one another's and began wandering around the garden. "Oh, how lovely your home is, Margot, darling," said little Suzanne enthusiastically. "And how happy you must be." "Aye, indeed, I ought to be happy, oughtn't I, sweet one?" said Marguerite, with a wistful little sigh. "How sadly you say it, Cherie. Ah, well, I suppose now that you are a married woman, you won't care to talk secrets with me any longer. Oh, what lots and lots of secrets we used to have at school. Do you remember? Some we did not confide to Sister Teresa of the Holy Angels, though she was such a dear." If Marguerite tells little Suzanne all her thoughts and feelings on this, I'll be very mad. She could ruin it all. And now you have one all-important secret, eh, little one, said Marguerite merrily, which you are forthwith going to confide in me. Nay, you need not blush, Cherie, she added, as she saw Suzanne's pretty little face crimson with blushes. Faith, there is naught to be ashamed of. He is a noble and true man, and one to be proud of as a lover and as a husband. Indeed, Cherie, I am not ashamed, rejoined Suzanne softly, and it makes me very, very proud to hear you speak so well of him. I think Maman will consent, she added thoughtfully, and I shall be, oh, so happy, but of course nothing is to be thought of until Papa is safe. Marguerite started. Suzanne's father? The Comte de Tournay? One of those whose life would be jeopardized if Chauvelin succeeded in establishing the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel. She had understood all along from the Comtesse, and also from one or two of the members of the League, that their mysterious leader had pledged his honor to being the fugitive Comte de Tournay safely out of France. While little Suzanne, unconscious of all save her own all-important little secret, went prattling on, Marguerite's thoughts went back to the events of the past night. Armand's peril, Chauvelin's threat, his cruel either-or which she had accepted, and then her own work in this matter, which should have culminated at 1 o'clock in Lord Grenville's dining room, when the relentless agent of the French government, who would finally learn who was this mysterious Scarlet Pimpernel, who so openly defied an army of spies and placed himself so boldly, and for mere sport on the side of the enemies of France. Since then she had heard nothing from Chauvelin. She had concluded that he had failed, and yet she had not felt anxious about Armand because her husband had promised her that Armand would be safe. But now, suddenly as Suzanne prated merrily along, an awful horror came upon her for what she had done. Chauvelin had told her nothing, it was true, but she remembered how sarcastic and evil he looked when she finally took leave of him after the ball. He had discovered something then. He had already laid his plans for catching the daring plotter, red-handed in France, and sending him to the guillotine without compunction or delay. Marguerite turned sick with horror, and her hand convulsively clutched the ring in her dress. You are not listening, Cherie, said Suzanne reproachfully as she paused in her long, highly interesting narrative. Yes, darling, indeed I am, said Marguerite with an effort, forcing herself to smile. I love hearing you talk, and your happiness makes me so very glad. Have no fear. We will manage to propitiate Maman. Sir Andrew Ffoulkes is a noble English gentleman. He has money and positions. The Comtesse will not refuse her. But now, little one, tell me, what is the latest news about your father? Oh, said Suzanne with mad glee, the best we could possibly hear. My Lord Hastings came to see Maman early this morning. He said that all is now well with your papa, and we may safely expect him here in England in less than 4 days. Yes, said Marguerite, whose glowing eyes were fastened on Suzanne's lips, as she continued merrily. Oh, we have no fear. You don't know, Cherie, that great and noble Scarlet Pimpernel himself has gone to save Papa. He is gone, Cherie, actually gone, added Suzanne excitedly. He was in London this morning and will be in Calais perhaps tomorrow, where he will meet Papa, and then, the blow had fallen. There we go. She expected it all along, though she had tried for at least half an hour to delude herself and cheat her fears. He had gone to Calais, had been in London this morning. He, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Percy Blakeney, her husband, whom she had betrayed last night to Chauvelin. Percy, her husband, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Oh, how could she have been so blind? She understood it now, all at once. The part he played, the mask he wore, in order to throw dust in everybody's eyes. And all for sheer sport and devilry, of course, saving men, women, and children from death, as other men destroy and kill animals for excitement, the love of a thing. The idle rich man wanted some aim in life. He and the few young bucks he enrolled under his banner had amused themselves for months in risking their life for the sake of an innocent few. Perhaps he had meant to tell her when they were first married, and then the story of the Marquis de St. Cyr had come to his ears, and he had suddenly turned from her, thinking no doubt that she might someday betray him and his comrades, who had sworn to follow him. And so he had tricked her, as he tricked all others, whilst hundreds now owed their lives to him, and many families owed him both life and happiness. The mask of the inane fop had been a good one, and the part consummately well played. No wonder that Chauvelin's spies had failed to detect in the brainless nincompoop a man whose reckless and daring and resourceful ingenuity had baffled the keenest French spies, both in France and in England. Even last night when Chauvelin went to Lord Grenville's dining room to seek that daring Scarlet Pimpernel, he only saw that inane Sir Percy Blakeney fast asleep in the corner of a sofa. Had his astute mind guessed the secret then? Here lay the whole awful, horrible, amazing puzzle. And betraying a nameless stranger to his fate in order to save her brother, had Marguerite Blakeney sent her husband to his death? No, 1,000 times no. Surely fate could not deal a blow like that. Nature itself would rise in revolt. Her hand, when it held that tiny scrap of paper last night, would surely have been struck numb ere it committed a deed so appalling and so terrible. But what is it, chérie? Said little Suzanne, now genuinely alarmed, for Marguerite's color had become dull and ashen. Are you ill, Marguerite? What is it? Nothing, child, she murmured, as in a dream. Wait a moment, let me think. You said the Scarlet Pimpernel had gone today? Marguerite, chérie, what is it? You frighten me. It is nothing, child. I tell you, nothing. I must be alone a minute, and, dear one, I may have to curtail our time together today. I may have to go away, you'll understand. Oh, interesting. Is she going to go away? I understand that something has happened, chérie, and that you want to be alone. I won't be a hindrance to you. Don't think of me. My maid Lucille has not yet gone. We will go back together. Don't think of me. She threw her arms impulsively round Marguerite. Child as she was, she felt the poignancy of her friend's grief, and with the infinite tact of her girlish tenderness, she did not want to pry into it, but was ready to efface herself. It's a good friend. She kissed Marguerite again and again, and walked sadly back across the lawn. Marguerite did not move. She remained there, thinking, wondering what was to be done. Just as little Suzanne was about to mount the terrace steps, the groom came running around his house toward his mistress. He carried a sealed letter in his hand. Suzanne instinctively turned back. Her heart told her that here perhaps was further ill news for her friend, and she felt that poor Margot was not in a fit state to bear any more. The groom stood respectfully beside his mistress and handed her the sealed letter. What is it? Asked Marguerite. Just come by runner, my lady. Marguerite took the letter mechanically and turned it over in her trembling fingers. Who sent it? The runner said, my lady, replied the groom, that his orders were to deliver this and that to your ladyship would understand from whom it came. Marguerite tore open the letter. Already her instinct had told her what it contained, and her eyes only glanced at it mechanically. It was a letter written by Armand St. Just to Sir Andrew Ffoulkes, a letter which Chauvelin's spies had stolen at the Fisherman's Rest, and which Chauvelin had held as a rod over her to enforce her obedience. Now he had kept his word. He had sent her back St. Just's compromising letter, for he was on the track of the Scarlet Pimpernel. Interesting. Marguerite's senses reeled. Her very soul seemed to be leaving her body. She tottered, and would have fallen but for Suzanne's arms around her waist. With superhuman effort, she regained control over herself. There was much yet to be done. Bring that runner to me, she said to the servant with much calm. He is not gone. No, my lady. The groom went, and Marguerite turned to Suzanne. And you, my child, run within. Tell Lucille to get ready. I fear I must send you home, child. And tell one of the maids to prepare a traveling dress and cloak for me. Suzanne made no reply. She kissed Marguerite tenderly, and obeyed without a word. The child was overawed by the terrible, nameless misery in her friend's face. A minute later, the groom returned, followed by the runner who had brought the letter. Who gave you this packet? Asked Marguerite. A gentleman, my lady, replied the man. At the Rose and the Thistle Inn, opposite Charing Cross. He said you would understand. At the Rose and Thistle, what was he doing? He was waiting for the coach, your ladyship, which he had ordered. The coach? Yes, my lady, a special coach he had ordered. I understood from this his man that he was posting straight to Dover. That's enough, you may go. Then she turned to the groom. My coach and the 4 swiftest horses in the stable to be ready at once. The groom and the runner both went off quickly to obey. Marguerite remained standing for a moment on the lawn, quite alone. Her graceful figure was rigid as a statue. Her eyes were fixed. Her hands were tightly clasped along her breast. Her lips moved as they murmured, with pathetic, heartbreaking persistence, What's to be done? What's to be done? Where to find him? Oh God, grant me light. But this was not the moment for remorse and despair. She had done unwittingly an an awful and terrible thing, the very worst crime in her eyes that a woman ever committed. She saw it all in its horror. Her very blindness in not having guessed her husband's secret seemed now to her another deadly sin. She ought to have known. She ought to have known. How could she imagine that a man who could love with so much intensity as Sir Percy Blakeney had loved her from the first, how could such a man be the brainless idiot he chose to appear? She, at least, ought to have known that he was wearing a mask, and having found that out, she should have torn it from his face whenever they were alone together. Her love for him had been paltry and weak, easily crushed by her own pride. She too had worn a mask, assuming a contempt for him, whilst a matter of fact she completely misunderstood him. But there was no time now to go over the past. By her own blindness she had sinned. Now she must repay, not by empty remorse, but by prompt and useful action. Percy had started for Calais utterly and unconscious of the fact that his most relentless enemy was on his heels. He had set sail early that morning from London Bridge. Provided he had a favorable wind, he would no doubt be in France within 24 hours. No doubt he had reckoned on the wind and chosen this route. Chauvelin, on the other hand, would post to Dover, charter a vessel there, and undoubtedly reach Calais much about the same time. Once in Calais, Percy would meet all those who were eagerly awaiting for the noble and brave Scarlet Pimpernel, who would come to rescue them from horrible and unmerited death. With Chauvelin's eyes now fixed upon his every movement, Percy would thus not only be endangering his own life, but that of Suzanne's father, the old Comte de Tournay, and those of the other fugitives who were waiting for him and trusting in him. There was also Armand, who had gone to meet de Tournay, secure in the knowledge that the Scarlet Pimpernel was watching over his safety. All these lives and that of her husband lay in Marguerite's hands. She must save. These she must save, if human pluck and ingenuity were equal to the task. Unfortunately, she could not do all this quite alone. Once in Calais, she would not know where to find her husband, whilst Chauvelin, in stealing the papers at Dover, had obtained the whole itinerary. Above everything, she wished to warn Percy. She knew enough about him by now to understand that he would never abandon those who trusted in him, and that he would not turn back from danger and leave the Comte de Tournay to fall in the bloodthirsty hands that knew of no mercy. But if he were warned, he might form new plans, be more wary, more prudent. Unconsciously, he might fall into a cunning trap, but once warned, he might succeed. And if he failed, if indeed fate and Chauvelin, with all the resources at his command, proved too strong for the daring plotter after all, then at least she would be there by his side, to comfort, love, and cherish, to cheat death perhaps at the last by making it seem sweet. If they both died together, locked in each other's arms, with the supreme happiness of knowing that passion had responded to passion, and that all misunderstandings were at an end. That's a great paragraph. That's the best written one that she's had. Her whole body stiffened, as with a great firm resolution. This she meant to do, if God gave her wits and strength. Her eyes lost their fixed look. They glowed with inward fire, at the thought of meeting him again so soon. In the very midst of the most deadly perils, they sparkled with the joy of sharing these dangers with him, of helping him, of being with him at last if she failed. The childlike sweet face had become hard and set. The curved mouth was closed tightly over her clenched teeth. She meant to do or die, with him and for his sake. A frown, which spoke of an iron will and an unbending resolution, appeared between the two straight brows. Already her plans were formed. She would go and find Sir Andrew Ffoulkes first. He was Percy's best friend. And Marguerite remembered with a thrill, with what blind enthusiasm the young man had always spoken of the mysterious leader. He would help her where she needed help. Her coach was ready. A change of raiment and a farewell to little Suzanne, and she could be on her way. Without haste, but without hesitation, she walked quietly into the house. Dang. Good chapter. The mission is on now. we're in the thick of the story here. All right, I gotta run. I can't read the last chapter, which is chapter 20 that we were gonna read today. I'm in a bit of a time crunch right now, so I'm hoping to be back sometime this weekend to maybe pick up and read. But I'll try to let you guys know. I'm not positive when the next reading is gonna be, but yeah, I think sometime this weekend, maybe Sunday night. That's probably the time that I would be able to do it. So I'll see you guys then. I got to run right now. So it was a pleasure as always. And Percy's the Scarlet Pimpernel, and she knows now. Finally, about time. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks for joining.